What's up, folks, and welcome to another indie showcase. You know, it's actually pretty rare that I do both a stream of an indie game and a video of it. Usually, certain games are better suited to one rather than the other. But even though I did stream this game, I wanted to do a video of it as well because, frankly, I don't think it's getting the love it deserves. And I really wanted to show it to more people because this is something very special. I think once we get into it and you see the look of it, a lot of you are going to probably assume it's a Dead Cells knockoff, and I can't blame you for that initial impression, but that would be very much incorrect. This is very much its own game, it's very different, and it's not a roguelite for one thing. So yeah, I really wanted to show this to you. Also, it's developed in Canada, and I love showing off games made by my fellow Canuckians. So yeah, this is Foregone, and like I said, the key difference between this and Dead Cells, which I think you can see right off the bat it has a lot visually in common with, is that this is not a roguelite. It is a linear platformer. You could say it's a little bit Metroidvania because you can go back and forth between different areas, but really no, it's pretty much a linear platformer here. So I put a few hours into it so far, and I've gone through a few different levels here. I'm going to go back to the first area so that A, I don't spoil things, and B, I can give you a little bit of an explanation here of what this is. So this is a game that, well, okay, so it pitches itself as having a story that has a lot of intrigue and conspiracy and stuff in it. I'm going to be honest with you, after a couple of hours, not much story has really been revealed to me. This character has said a few things, but none of it has really led me to believe that there is, it's not given me any indications to the deeper point of the story so far. It may evolve further as it goes on. But at least at this point, story, to me, from what I have played, has not been its huge strong suit. But, so you're playing this character here, and she is bent on trying to take revenge and trying to figure out some chain of events that happened here. And obviously you're doing that via platformy, hacky-slashy, shooty things. So I'm going to say right off the bat that you're going to hear me compare this game to Dead Cells a lot, only because that is sort of, especially visually, the analog for comparison. But like I said, this is really a different game. But as you can see here, the both art style and animation are very, very similar, and that is very complimentary. I don't know what era you would call this. It is pixel art. It's too far ahead to be something you would have typically seen in the 16-bit era. It's maybe more akin to something that you would have seen on, say, like the Saturn or the PS1, but I think even that's not quite right. It's kind of a half step almost. This is almost like if you needed to compare it, a lot of people, myself included, who like pixel art like to say, well, this looks like something that came from the NES era or the Super Nintendo era or the Genesis or, you know, the Amiga or whatever. I can't really pin a generation down for this one. It's somewhere in between. It really is, but quite stunning, as you can see. The animation is very, very fluid, and it looks really good. The controls are very responsive. I am playing with a controller, though you can play this with keyboard if you like. They really nailed this, and it's interesting because Big Blue Bubble, the developer that made this, their main bag is mobile games, which, funny enough, here comes another, if don't drink every time I make a Dead Cells comparison because you'll probably die of alcohol poisoning, but much like the developers of that game as well, the history of this developer is mostly in mobile stuff, and this is a foray they're making into a more traditional hardcore title, and honestly, it really doesn't feel like this is something they don't have experience with, because this is very, very fluid, and it plays very well. It's very responsive, and it is not a casual title at all. I will say it has not been especially difficult yet, but I still have quite a ways to go, and so it could definitely get a lot more challenging. Now, you're seeing me cut through this level as well because I have gotten further into the game than this, and as a result, I do have much better gear than this area is really fitting for, so that's part of the reason there. But yeah, this doesn't feel like a title that it was made by a studio who principally makes mobile stuff, honestly. It feels very, very polished and clearly made by people who have a love of this kind of game and a good knowledge of it. So, But you're kind of seeing what the core idea of it is here. You're going through these levels. You're going to be fighting different enemies. There are bosses in this. The bosses are reasonably challenging, at least the ones that I've fought so far. And you're sort of picking up loot, and you have powers that you can use, which I haven't really been using here because I haven't had to, but you have different powers that you'll be able to acquire and equip onto your character. And you also do have, interestingly in this is another way it's not like a roguelike, is you do have a healing ability. So on my right trigger there is a healing ability, and I only needed a little bit of it there because I'm so over armored for this level that I'm not taking much damage. I unlocked an achievement. I don't know what I did there. But you do have a healing ability in this that you can use to sort of save yourself, but it comes with a couple of trade-offs, which is that in order to use it, your character has to stand still. So if you're in the middle of a tough battle encounter, that can make things difficult. And it is limited. It recharges by doing damage to enemies, but it takes a while. It's very, very slow. So it's not something you're going to be able to use frequently, and if you're not careful, you may use it a little bit too early and get yourself, you know, in a bit of a situation where you're going to end up kind of screwed and not be able to get back what you need to keep going. And you're going to pick up currency and things like that as well. Now, this game does have loot, and it does have equipment, but the equipment is the primary focus of it. So in a game like Dead Cells, take a drink, or don't, you have... Equipment is a very, very big part of it, but you're also unlocking different powers and abilities, many of which are passive. And that's the idea with roguelites, right? You play, the longer you play, you start getting iteratively more powerful, and the game becomes less difficult because you have continue to max out your character a little bit further. This kind of has that too, but it is almost entirely focused on gear. You do have these passive abilities that you can unlock, but you're not really unlocking much in the way of other powers or passives. You're just unlocking better gear and selling off the gear that you don't need. It's not as complex as a full-on looter shooter type of game, or even something like a Diablo, but that is the main loop of it, is that it's very focused on gear as opposed to powers or abilities. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that here. I have gathered some gear up here. Now, everything I'm gathering in this level isn't going to be as good as I have, so I'm going to be ditching it all, but it'll give you an idea of what the system looks like. So you'll go through these different levels that do have checkpoints. The environments do vary quite a bit, as do the challenges within. But you'll get to these different periods where you will have an ability to teleport back to your home, or to your hub, which is going to be right here, actually. And it's kind of neat. The game allows you to keep going on if you want, but if you decide, okay, I want to go back and check my gear and get some other things like that, you can do that. And here we go. So it takes you back to your hub area here, and this is, you know, a fairly common hub area. So you get to go down here, you got the forge guy, and here we go. So you get to do a whole bunch of things. So you have several different base categories of loot, but it's fairly basic. You got your swords, you got your guns, because your character has two different kinds of attacks. They have a melee and a ranged. So you have those, you have armor, and you have rings, and you have what they call emblems, which is basically, you know, amulets, right? And these give you additional bonuses here. And what you can do is, it's very easy, as you can see, to just look through and compare things against what you've got now. But if you don't want things, you can mark them for salvage. I love games that do this, that rather than make you sell things one at a time, you can just mark things en masse, and boom, they're all gone. The only thing I wish it did let you do was mark things in different categories all at once. So, for example, I can mark everything in here, but if I change over here and come back, it's unmarked. I wish I could mark stuff in here, switch to another category, have it remember that, and then be able to sell basically all my stuff from all my different categories en masse. Not a big deal, but a minor quality of life thing nonetheless. So all of this stuff that I picked up is not very impressive, but you can see. And in addition to that, if you have some money, you can throw upgrades into them. And what that does is, so it upgraded, in this amulet, you can see it upgraded a basic stat, and doing that, you can spend large amounts of money to upgrade it to a certain top level, and then that's kind of all you can do with it. But, so the upgrades can get expensive, but you see, they're fairly substantial, right? I actually haven't done it on this latest round of loot, because when I stopped playing last time, I just acquired all this stuff, and I never got around to doing it. So, and I have a lot of money saved up, so I'm spending, yes, I'm spending pretty much everything I got here, but now I'm kind of an unstoppable badass, which is kind of nice. So you get to do that, and as you can see, it's a very easy process to do, right? Now, the other thing you can do back at the base that's kind of cool, this is kind of neat. These are little side missions that are designed specifically for each of the different areas that you're going into. And these are different types of objectives. So this one, you see, it's combat. Basically, there's a certain number of enemies in the area, and you have to take them out within a time limit. Not as easy as it sounds. Actually, when I started it off, this mission completely smoked me. And then there's other ones like hazards, which are a little bit more... little bit more environmental traps than enemies, let's say, things like that. And then here's two here that I haven't completed, and then there's a tough one. I don't know if that symbol means it's a boss battle or just a really hard mission or whatever at the end, but we haven't done that yet. But here, let's go in and check one of these out. Especially now that I've upgraded, maybe I'll have an easier time of it. So you see there in the corner, 58 threats remaining, and we're running and we're on the clock here, but you see you get a little bit of extra time for it. So it's almost like a little challenge. You know, if you were playing a roguelite, a lot of those have daily or weekly challenge modes. This kind of feels like that. And I like that. It's a nice little add-on. They're completely optional. They're not necessary, though you get some nice extra, you know, bells and whistles in that if you do complete them, but you don't have to if you don't want to. But really, I do think they made them kind of a core part of the game, so you probably would want to do that. And as you can see here, because I'm fighting enemies that are more on my level, I'm definitely not just stomping through the level with nothing to worry about like I was before. So if my health gets a little lower here, I'm going to show you how that works. How the healing system works, that is. So, actually, you know what? Let's just do it. So you see there, I can heal myself, but you don't heal rapidly, and you got to stand still while you're doing it. So there is risk reward even involved in that. And as you can see, by taking out enemies, I am charging it back up, but not quickly. So you gotta, especially later in the levels, you gotta really be careful to balance that properly, or that's how you can get yourself hosed. But yeah, it's funny enough, because as much as I like this game, it's not a very hard game to explain from a core principle perspective. As you can see here, the enemies are getting quite a bit more interesting. But my gun in particular here is a friggin' unstoppable force, so... But you also have as well, you'll see there where my health meter is, you do have ammo in this, and your ammo... you only have a certain number of shots, and your ammo does recharge, but again, you got to balance it. You can't just stand back and bullet spam every enemy, because if you do that, you're going to run out of bullets and find yourself in a bit of a tricky position. So, you're not balancing as many plates as you will in something like a roguelike, for sure. This is definitely more of a standard, more linear platformer. But I don't have a problem with that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love roguelikes. Dead Cells, which is... I make the comparisons to that, not just because you can see a lot that this might have in common with it, especially stylistically, but Dead Cells, as someone who plays a lot of roguelikes, Dead Cells probably is my favorite one of those. Because it's just such an incredibly polished experience that has so many different systems in it, and so many different things that are... didn't make it. And so many different things that are at play, and so many different plates you have to spin in it, that when I saw this, I was like, wow, I really want to play this, because it potentially looks like another one of those. And it's not, but it has... I don't know if this game was inspired by Dead Cells or not. I think it's hard to say that it wasn't, but you never know. But if it was, I would say that it took the parts of the Dead Cells DNA that were really needed to make a really good quality linear platformer, and they did that with it. They didn't try to copy Dead Cells. They didn't try to make another roguelike. They didn't try to make another, anything. They didn't try to bite off more than they could chew. They wanted to focus on something that was, more of a traditional platformer, and something that is a little bit more story heavy. And while I do think that either the story in this is going to be simplistic, or it's just very slow to get going, you know, you can tell that they were trying to do their own thing. They took what they liked from another game, but tried to make their own thing with its own identity. And on that, I think they very much succeeded. You know, I love roguelikes, I love Dead Cells, but you don't necessarily have to copy that. But Dead Cells has ideas in it that can translate to other games and make other different experiences that are equally as compelling. And I think that's what these devs really accomplished here, and I'm really impressed with that. You know, when I was offered the code for this game, oh, I think one of them dropped. So those enemies there, you saw there was a key symbol. Ah, here he is. There was a key symbol over their head. So you need to take these out to get the key to open the door. There we go. So, but when I was offered the code for this, I looked at it and I went, wow, this looks really cool. And the way it was pitched, because they pitched it as a platformer, and when I saw the art style, I was like, oh, okay, this might be another, you know, another Dead Cells-like game, and I wouldn't mind having another one of those if it's well made, so let's check it out. But what I saw was something that surprised me quite a bit more, and really is a lot different, and in a way that really pleasantly surprised me, which is something that doesn't always happen, and I was very pleased by it. I will say that, at least on PC, based on the Steam review count, it doesn't feel like this game's gotten a lot of love and attention yet, and I think that's a real shame, which is why I wanted to show it off to you guys. I don't know if it's just because, you know, it got buried in the Steam tsunami, or if it's that people are looking at it and unfortunately just going, oh, this is just a Dead Cells ripoff. Because that happens. I mean, I've done things like that before, too. You look at screenshots in a trailer for a game that looks a lot like another game, and you're like, oh, it's from a developer I might not necessarily know. And, okay, I guess this is, you know, this is just them trying to cash in on that, and who cares, and you move on. I don't know if that's what's happening here, and I really hope it isn't, but I could see that being the case. Oh, dear. So this place is a little interesting, isn't it? And this is not that. This game is not a Dead Cells ripoff. It is definitely, it has its own identity, and frankly, I've been playing games long enough to know when something was clearly made with a lot of love, care, and passion. And Foregone definitely is that. I absolutely intend to finish this. I don't think it's very long. The average time on how long to beat, I think, is either 5 or 6 hours, which isn't bad for the price, to be honest with you. I think that's quite reasonable. And it's not going to, you know, if you don't like roguelikes, which a lot of people don't because they can be very grindy and very frustrating, then this is not that, and you're going to get something different with this experience. If you like platformers, but you prefer the more linear formula and you don't prefer, you know, the sort of grindiness and the nature of roguelikes, then this is right up your alley. This is going to do it for you. And yeah, I really think it does deserve more attention, because this really does feel like one of those really quality releases that for whatever reason or another just seems to have kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. And that's a shame. It really shouldn't. So I wanted to show this to you guys. But yeah, that's really all I got to say about it. What you've been seeing me do here is the core of it. So if you're into this stuff, you're probably already sold by it. If you're not into this stuff, well, then this is probably just confirmed that it's something that you're not into, and that's all right. But you know, platformers are popular, and good platformers, you know, platformers are often a dime a dozen. Good ones are not necessarily, and I like to really highlight what the good ones are. I think this one definitely deserves your time. So yeah, that is Foregone. It's developed by Big Blue Bubble. It is on PC and all the major consoles, so you can get this anywhere you feel like it. And it has been a real pleasant surprise. It's something I knew very little about going in, and I've been really enjoying it. You know, my community will tell you that when I was streaming this, I sort of had a smile on my face the whole time. And I really love to get pleasantly surprised by new games, and this definitely did that. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. I do appreciate it. If you did like what you saw here, please click all the things, like, subscribe, hit the bell. Please spread word around. That helps the channel get noticed by more and more people. It's harder than ever to get noticed on YouTube these days, and I really appreciate any help you folks can offer so that we can show more cool indie games to people. And yeah, leave a comment down below if you would. Tell me what you think of this. You know, did this surprise you? Did you think this was just another Dead Cells, or, you know, do you think that this is interesting? What are there other interesting platformers that have come out recently that that I maybe have missed? Because Lord knows there's a ton of stuff out there that I don't get to see that I would probably like. So I'm always interested in covering new stuff on the channel, even if it's a little bit older too. If it's something that is not getting a lot of attention that you think people should see, I'd love to hear about it. So yes, indeed. And you can also follow me over at twitch.tv/pxabstraction for multiple variety streams a week, including often of indies like this. So if indies are your jam, that's a good thing to check out as well. So all right, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope maybe we can spur some more interest in it. And I will see you all on the next episode of Indie Showcase. You folks have yourselves a good one. Take it easy, folks.